Yo guys, what is going on? Blossom is back and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives and another episode of Are These Cars Overpowered or Overrated? I think that's how I should name the series, but the series is really only going to be 2 episodes, so this is part 2. So in the last episode, I covered the cars that I managed to leak, or tease, I guess, not really leak, but the cars that I tease and the cars Android tease. Today we're going to be covering the cars that Yellowfin had, as well as the Top Drives official channel. So without further ado, I think you guys know how it works. I'm going to make you take off your rose tinted glasses basically, and I'm going to give you guys a reality check and compare the new cars that we've seen so far and compare them to actual cars that we know in the game to see, maybe giving us a benchmark on how well or how badly they will perform. Now, I didn't know what to call these cars into the Savannah. I think it's called It's like last episode, but Clarkson did say that I should just call them Straya cars, and obviously Clarkson is Australian. I mean, not the real. Well, maybe Jeremy Clarkson is secretly Australian, but Clarkson, the Clarkson that commented, he's Australian, so I gotta listen, man, okay? Straya cars, so let's get into it. Starting us off is the Chrysler Drifter van. Now, the Chrysler Drifter is pretty interesting. It's not that bad. Like, for an RQ13 performance tire car, it has a very low 0 to 60 of 9.6 seconds. That is a lot higher than your average RQ13 performance tire car, like the Nissan Datsun with 10.7, and it's even 0.3 seconds lower compared to the Ford Mustang 2 King Cobra, which is 3 RQ higher. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting. It'll be a pretty good low RQ dragster, the Chrysler Drifter. I'm going to give it a hype meter of 7 out of 10. One of the few common I might somewhat look forward to. Next up though is going to be the Chrysler by Chrysler CH. Nothing too special about this. It looks like a dime a dozen. It's sitting somewhere between the Nissan Cedric as well as the Jaguar MK1, and the MK1 just seems to be the better car. I mean, the 0 to 60 difference when it comes to commons, I mean, it's just crazy that all of these cars are RQ17 and the 0 to 60 difference is like 11.9 to 10.8. like that's a 1.1 second difference, all within the same RQ, and these are all cars that are in the same niche. They're all, you know, pre-80s, they're all standard tires, they're all rear wheel drive, they're all medium ground clearance, so I think, you know, common rarity is just a mess. Moving on now is going to be the Holden Monaro. No, the Monaro is a good looking car. Like, I like how it looks, and I think that is a bias to the hype meter. Once again, the hype meter is a personal thing. It's basically how hype I am personally for these cars, and I think that the Monaro is pretty cool. But aside from that, the stats leave little to be desired. I mean, it really is just a carbon copy of the BMW 2800 CS. The same 0 to 60, almost the same top speed. They're both performance, they're both rear-wheel drive. I'm assuming that they're both going to be medium. The 2800 is medium, but I'm going to assume that the Monaro is medium. And they both have 65 handling as well. Nothing too special to say about it. It's a bit of a hybrid kind of car, but it's not going to win you much. So high meter, I'm only going to put it a little above average because I like the car. I think it's pretty cool. But aside of that, it's not going to get me any value at all. Talking about cars that will get you no value, the Holden Tirana is going to bring nothing to the table as well. It's 1 RQ higher compared to the Dodge Aspen RT, and the Aspen has a lower 0 to 60, and the handling is very, very similar, 66 to 65. Putting the Tirana against a car within its RQ range, which is, you know, 18 and 18, another rear-wheel drive performance tire, medium ground clearance car, I decided to put it up against the Bentley Mulsanne. And the Bentley Mulsanne handles a lot better, but the 0 to 60 is terrible, 10 seconds compared to 8.8. It's a big difference. I mean, at the end of the day, none of the 3 cars that you see over here are going to get you a lot of value, but I think that the Aspen is going to be the best out of the bunch because it is the cheapest to use, and all of their stats are very similar. At the end of the day, these cars are just going to lose anyway. So if I'm going to lose, I'd rather just choose the car that's cheaper so I can use 1 more RQ somewhere else. So high meter, pretty low, not too interested about that. Next up, moving on to uncommons, the Chrysler by Chrysler 360. Once again, I think it's kind of in the middle of the Jaguar Mark II as well as the Impala. The good thing about it is that it's cheaper to use compared to the Jaguar Mark II, but it has very similar stats. Same 0 to 60, almost the same top speed. Handling is very similar as well. Unfortunately, the Chrysler by Chrysler is not going to be like this dragster that I want to use because at the same Mark RQ, the Chevrolet Impala has a 1.5 second difference to 60, which is really just night and day. Like, I know that the handling on the Chrysler by Chrysler is better, but 62, I mean, you're really just comparing 62 to 55. You're just comparing which crap smells nicer. At the end of the day, they're both useless handling scores anyway. You can give that Chevrolet Impala a handling score of 1, and it wouldn't make a difference to how I will compare it to the Chrysler by Chrysler, because these are two cars that I will put on the drag and nothing else. Moving on is going to be the Ford Laser SR2. I mean, it looks pretty good by itself, but when you compare it to other cars in the game, it basically looks like a slightly weaker version of the Opel Kadett. The Opel Kadett is a really good car to compare the Laser to be fair, so props to that. But if it's not going to best the Opel Kadett, then I don't even care, really. So I'm gonna give it an average score of 5 out of 10. It's not a bad car though. I don't think the Laser is bad at all. 85 handling when you max it out. The 0 to 60 is relatively low. I think you'll get like 8.6 or something. I don't know what the 0 to 60 will be, honestly. It's a big difference when it comes to high 0 to 60s, but it's just not going to be as good as the Opel Kadett. Moving on now, or at least stats wise, it might have better MRA and it might end up being the better car, but we won't know until the car actually comes to the game. Next up is the Ford Falcon Bathurst Cobra 7.669. I mean, it doesn't look like it's going to be good anywhere. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, it's even a stretch to call it a jack of all trades, because 69 handling is just garbage. But the 7.60 to 60, I mean, yeah, it's in between the Citroen and it's in between the Plymouth Barracuda. The Barracuda has a way lower 0 to 60, but it's a very similar situation to the Chrysler by Chrysler. Like, the Barracuda could have 1 handling and I would still be putting it on the same table with the Falcon, because the handling on these cars mean absolutely nothing. The Citroen CX Turbo is the main car that I really want to compare it to. I feel like the Falcon would be more of a dragster kind of car, but if it's not able to beat the Citroen, then it's just going to be completely useless. The Citroen, you know, has really good MRA, as many of you know, 80 MRA. It's a very good dragster. If the Bathurst can't get anywhere close to 80 MRA, it's just not going to hold a candle, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I'm not going to be using it too much, and it's a bit of a shame because it's a really cool car and Hutch decided to give it such a crap photo. It's kind of sad. Moving on now to the Holden Pizza. I'm just going to call it the Pizza. I don't care. That other A is silent. The Holden Pizza Turbo. It even looks like a pizza slice, okay? The wedge is back. 8.475. I mean, literally just, if it's like, it's very similar to the Lancia Beta Coupe. The Lancia Beta Coupe is 86.77 compared to the Holden 84.75, or well, 84 8.4. But at the end of the day, I think that the Holden Pizza is still going to be a worse version of the Nissan Skyline, and the Nissan Skyline just has a lower 0 to 60. The handling is very similar as well, 75 to 74, both being medium ground clearance rear-wheel drive RQ28 cars. I would still choose the Skyline, and I would think that the Skyline and the Pizza are pretty similar in terms of weight. They are light cars. Height meter, pretty low, 3 out of 10. All right, moving on now. We got the Holden Barina. Now this thing just looks like a piece of crap. I mean, 1 RQ more than the Chrysler Laser, but it's just worse. That's all I can say to it. It's just not a good car. All right, moving on is the Holden Cruise. Now, this looks promising. 78 handling for an RQ37 medium ground clearance standard tire car is strong. Not as strong as the DS3 with 79, but the 0 to 60 of 0.4 seconds is very good. So I think that the Holden Cruise might be the perfect balance between the Pontiac G8, or sorry, the Pontiac G6 and the DS3 Blue HDI. This car I am quite intrigued about. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Looks pretty good. Moving on now is going to be the Holden HGT. I love how the car looks. Don't get me wrong. Beautiful car. And you know me, man. I love my saloons. But that's where the good things lie. The stats just look like they suck. For an RQ38 6575 isn't good enough. You compare it to the Ford Mustang at 6374 or even the Bentley Arnage at 6273. I personally think that the Holden will be a bit closer to the Bentley, as in like I'm only going to use it kind of in a drag situation, so that's why I'm putting it up against the Bentley as well as the Ford as well. I mean, there's not much to say about the HTD. It's a good looking car in my opinion, and that's where it ends. The stats suck. All right, moving on now. Next one is also another Holden, is the HSV Club Sport. This I'm comparing it directly to the Bentley Continental R and the Bristol Blenheim. The thing about it is that the on-paper stats of the Bentley Continental R is really good. 6.173 looks like it could be a borderline super rare. But let's not forget that it is a Bentley, it has no MRA, and it's incredibly heavy. So, although that the HSV has worse stats, it handles a little better, but the 0 to 60 is very weak for a saloon RQ39 with medium ground clearance. If the HSV is light and the MRA is just subpar or decent, I think that it would be probably operating around the same ranks as the Continental R and the Bristol, which are both rares that I would give 5 out of 10 anyway. Very like meh cars, you know what I mean? Like they're not bad, but they're also not good. So the Holden, if it's light, then it would hold the candle to the Bentley and the Bristol, because the Bristol and the Bentley are very, very, very heavy. But the Holden, you know, if it's light, then it might be okay. Moving on, I think it's a very similar one. It's going to be the Ford Falcon, another saloon Straya car. I'm comparing it directly to the Holden HSV that we just saw and the Bristol once again. The hype meter on this car is going to be higher than the Holden, mainly because it just looks like it's better. It has a 0.2 second lower 0 to 60, and it has one better handling. Also, it has a higher top speed. It just looks like it is the better car in every metric. It looks like it might be heavier, but I don't really care. It just looks like a better car compared to the Holden, so I'm going to give it more hype. But once again, we don't actually know until we see them in the game. Next up is going to be the Holden HGT Director. Now, this car looks really bad. Like, the on-paper stats look so bad. 6.274 for an RQ41. I mean, once again, you compare it to the Bentley Continental R, which is 2 RQ less. It has a lower 0 to 60. Like, the Bentley has a lower 0 to 60, a higher top speed, and only one less handling. So I think the real saving grace for the Holden is that it has to be light and the MRA has to be good, because the handling on the car isn't very good. You compare it to another RQ41 in the Infiniti G35, same 0 to 60, but the Infiniti handles better as well. So there's not much to say about the Director, man. If it doesn't have good MRA, if it isn't super light, it's gonna be a really bad car. Okay, moving on now is going to be the Holden Astra. Now this thing just looks like a piece of crap. I mean, once again, you compare it directly to the Acura 3.2, same RQ, but it's just a worse car. It has a worse 0 to 60, and then you compare it to a car that's just slightly better, the Vauxhall Corsa, and as you can see, I'd rather just choose the car with better handling. The main issue about the Astra is that when you become a front-wheel drive medium ground clearance hatchback, you already have this reputation that you're not going to have MRA. Like, it's going to be really bad, and I doubt that this Holden Astra has more than 80 MRA. Okay, if it does, you can chop off one of my testicles. Not literally, but I really don't think it's gonna have more than 80 MRA. Okay, and you know, the main thing about these front wheel drive medium ground clearance lightweight hatchbacks is that they have really good handling, usually over 80, but 78 is garbage. I mean, you compare it to every other hatchback super rare around, you know, RQ 44 to 46 medium ground clearance, or even 43, they all have like 81 handling, 82 handling, 83 handling, 84 handling. 78 sucks, dude. 78 actually sucks. I have no hype for that car whatsoever. All right, moving on is the Holden Murano CV8. This is a very sexy car because it's a rebadged Pontiac, and I like Pontiac. I think that it's just going to be a slightly worse version of the Volkswagen Scirocco R, which, I mean, it's not bad to compare it to. The Scirocco R, as much as I hate Volkswagen, the Scirocco R is actually a pretty good super rare. It has decent MRA. It's a very good jack of all trades kind of car. Like, I would make it lose by 50 to Outriggers. Like, it's a good bargain. So I think that the Holden Monaro is just going to be a worse bargain compared to the Scirocco R. That's it. If the Monaro has better MRA, then maybe it might actually be as good as the Scirocco R. I'm going to give it a hype meter of 7 out of 10. It's not too bad. I'm also comparing it to the Countach, and I think it's just crazy to compare the Holden Monaro to the Lamborghini Countach. Two absolutely completely different cars, but in terms of stats, they are pretty similar. 5.7, 5.6, 80 to 79, very similar top speed, both rear-wheel drive with performance tires. The Monaro is just a good looking car though. I do really like it. So personally, like from a personal standpoint, I am kind of hyped for it just because it's a car that I do want. Moving on now is going to be the Holden Callias, whatever it's called, piece of crap. It's 2 RQ more expensive compared to the Fiat 124, and the Fiat 124 is going to beat the Holden everywhere with a turn because it's just a lighter, more nimble car. The Holden Callias just looks like it's going to be heavy already. It doesn't handle as well as the BMW, and the BMW 520D Touring is already a pretty useless car. Rear wheel drive center tires is just a handicap. It's just unfortunate. Okay, so yeah, 0 out of 10, it's going to be crap. Never going to max that car out. Next up, the Holden Astra, also no hype around it. It's just a worse version of a car that's already been in the game for ages. So moving on is going to be the Ford FPV Pursuit. 3 out of 10. The main thing about it is that it's gonna be this medium ground clearance Super Rare RQ48, but it's just like so bad compared to the Ford Mustang GT convertible. Same RQ, but there's a 0.2 difference to 60. I mean, what the bloody hell. It also shares the same handling. I mean, the handling score for the FPV is a standout. 78 is the joint highest for a medium ground clearance kind of rear wheel drive Super Rare, you know, in its niche. It's a standout handling number. But the BMW 430i has the same handling number of 79 and a lower 0 to 60, and it's also 2 RQ cheaper to use. So the Ford FPV probably has way better MRA, but when it comes to city streets medium and city streets small, I probably just rather use the Mustang or the BMW if I want to save a little bit of RQ. So 3 out of 10, ain't much about it. All right, moving on now is going to be the Holden HSV GTS. Once again, it's a rebadged Pontiac. I think it's incredibly sexy. I'm very hyped for the car. I just love the photo. Probably one of my favorite super rares of the update that we have seen so far. On paper stats, looks pretty competitive compared to the BMW 640i and the Alpha Tipo. What I'll say is this though. The BMW 640D, I call it 640i, sorry. The BMW 640D has really good MRA, standout MRA. The Alpha Tipo 33 has standout weight. So for the Holden to be as competitive as the two cars I've compared it to, it needs to have some kind of standout stat. Not just a 0.1 second difference with the BMW. It has to have either really good MRA or really light. And it doesn't look like it's going to be really light, like, you know, Tipo 33 light. So it's gotta have MRA. That BMW 640D has like 89 MRA. It's really, really strong, at least according to Top Drives Club. So the Holden HSV GTS is gonna have at least a high 80 MRA to be as competitive, at least 85. So 7 out of 10 though. I think it's a really beautiful car. I like it. Moving on, we have the Ford FPV F6 Typhoon. Now, on paper, it looks pretty good. For a low ground clearance saloon, I'm assuming it's low ground clearance because it has very similar stats to other low ground clearance super rares within its RQ in the game. It has the best handling. 90 handling is very, very strong. Stronger than the Porsche Taycan, and it's even cheaper to use in terms of handling. And it kind of is very similar to the Ghibli, where the Ghibli excels in 0 to 60. The Ford makes up for it in handling. I think it's going to be a pretty good car. I like cars that handle very well. It looks very competitive for an RQ48. I think it's going to be pretty strong. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 on the hype meter. I think it'll be a pretty good super rare. Now, moving on is going to be the Ford FPV GT Cobra R-Spec. Now, once again, another saloon with decent handling. I'm not going to say good anymore because it is an RQ48, but, you know, decent handling with an okay 0 to 60. It looks like it's sitting somewhere in between the Nissan Silvia Nismo as well as the Roof Turbo 3.3, but we need to remember that those two cars that I'm comparing it to are coupes. The Ford FPV is a saloon, so that's going to be a new niche where it's going to be you know, filling up, because right now in Top Drives, low ground clearance saloons is only the Alpha, the Giulia Veloce. So, you know, these Fords are going to bring a lot of new life. I mean, I think that these Fords are going to be low ground clearance. I don't think they're going to be medium. If they are going to be medium, they're going to be really, really strong, like too strong for RQ50s. So, yeah, the Ford FPV is next. I'm also relatively excited for this car. It looks like, you know, a slightly better version of the Giulia Veloce. Very similar in handling, but of course, it has a way lower 0 to 60. I'm also comparing it to another low ground clearance, you know, non-saloon in the BMW Z4, and as you can see, it looks like the BMW Z4 is just going to be the better car. It just handles better, so it is going to be better in most scenarios. But of course, the Ford FPV is a saloon. It's going to be filling up a new niche which doesn't have a lot of competition. So the Alfa Romeo Giulia Veloce is finally going to have a little bit of competition within its ranks now. It's not going to be the only low ground clearance saloon 5-seater anymore. So I'm pretty excited for these Fords. I think that they're going to be pretty cool. They're definitely the shining light of this update. Next up is the Calibra Turbo. It's just a worse version of the Lancia Delta Integrale. Not too much to say about it. Pretty crap. All right, moving on is going to be the Holden Effigy. I mean, I didn't even know how to say Ute or whatever it was. I called it Ute, and it's not a Ute, it's a Ute or something like that. It was just kind of funny that I just didn't know that that word existed. But the Holden Effigy, if I'm even saying it right, like the only way it will be good if it has MRA, and even if it has MRA, it needs to have more MRA than the Temora, because if it has the same MRA as the Temora or slightly less, then the Temora is still going to be the better car literally everywhere that is useful in, because it has a way lower 0 to 60 and almost the same top speed, even almost the same handling, and the Temora is really freaking light. I don't think that the Effigy is going to be a light car, so the Holden Effigy needs to have at least over 90 MRA for it to be useful. Okay, if not, it's just gonna end up like the AC Cobra, as in like, yeah, the AC Cobra is a bit of a hybrid, but it has no MRA. It's gonna be a disappointment. You know, like if the Holden Effigy doesn't have good MRA, it's gonna end up like the AC Cobra. Like it's just gonna be a disappointment. So it's gotta have at least 90, because the TVR Temora has a 0.3 second lower 0 to 60 and 85 MRA already. Also, it's very light, so its off-the-line acceleration is pretty damn strong. So yeah, dude, the Holden Effigy, I'm cautiously optimistic. If it has good MRA, it'll be a really good car. If it doesn't have MRA, if it's anything under 85, it is going to be like a hype meter 2 out of 10. I don't care. Moving on next, because the handling is already crap. All right, moving on is the Holden. Okay, it's the Ute. It's the Ute. There you go. The Ute SSV Redline. What I think is pretty cool about the car is that it has the same stats as the prize car Pantera, 5282. I mean, sorry, it has better stats than the Di Tommaso Pantera. It has a slightly lower 0 to 60, so 5282 in the Pantera, 5182 in the Ute. That being said, though, it needs to hold a candle to the BMW 840i for it to be actually useful. The BMW 840i is just too strong. For an RQ59, like, that should at least be 61. 86 handling on that thing is crazy, and it's also medium. So I think that the Holden Ute isn't too bad. It's impressive that it's like, you know, it's competitive with the prize Pantera, but it's not as good as the 840i. So if it's not as good as the 840i, I can't give it more than a 5, because the 840i is literally cheaper to use. Same 0 to 60 and 4 more handling. All right, moving on now is going to be the Holden HSV Maloo R8, and I'm gonna give it an even lower height meter because it has the same stats as the RQ60, but it's 1 RQ more. Once again, I'm comparing it up against the BMW 840i and the Jaguar XES. Same RQ, but as you can see, there's a 0.6 second difference to 60, so I'm not too interested about that car. All right, moving on now is going to be the Ford Territory Turbo. Now, this car looks really freaking good, not gonna lie. I think it's gonna end up being medium ground clearance, because against every other high ground clearance car, the Ford Territory Turbo rocks. Like, it's got a low 0 to 60 and it handles pretty well. So I think it has to be medium ground clearance, and I think it makes sense because it looks pretty competitive compared to the Audi A6. The Audi A6 is medium, the Porsche Cayenne is high, and the Audi A6, you know, 6.8 to 6.7 handles better. I mean, the Territory handles better, 75 to 73. Looks like a pretty good car. I'm excited for it. 10 out of 10 on my part. All right, moving on now is the Holden Commodore SSV Redline. Once again, I'm comparing it to the Jaguar XES as well as the Ford Falcon XR8 Sprint, and it doesn't look that good. I mean, the handling number is very, very strong, but then in the last episode, we saw a Super that I think was 84, right? Or something like that. It was like the highest number or something like that. So 82 is still strong. 82 is still strong. It's not bad. But it really comes down to if it's able to be the Jaguar. I think the Jaguar is the benchmark for a lot of these Holdens. The Jaguar just has a very good 0 to 60, and the handling number isn't too bad. 80 isn't bad. Like, I would say it's like borderline. And the Ford Falcon, although has bad handling, you know, even though it's one less than the Jaguar XE, I gotta draw the line somewhere, and I'm drawing the line on 80. If it's under 80, it's bad. It's got a really good 0 to 60, 4.4 seconds. seconds compared to the Holden's 5.1. So I feel like this Holden may be a little overrated because of the higher top speed, but we'll see how it performs when it actually comes to the game. But I'm not too hyped about it. 5 out of 10. All right, moving on is the Holden HSV Avalanche. Nothing too special. It just looks like it's gonna fit between the BMW X1 as well as the Subaru Impreza Gravel Express. Nothing too much to say about it. Moving on, and I think it's the Epics now. Yes, and once again, man, much like the first episode, the Epics suck. I'm gonna say one thing I'm gonna hate about this update, the Straya update, is that it's really going to destroy the saloon carbon fiber, because I've not seen one good saloon been leaked from this update, and like all of the Epics look like they are just high performance saloons, but they're all really crap. Like, it's annoying because I'm a saloon collector, and these Holdens are going to destroy the value of the saloon carbon fiber because all of them suck. They suck, man. They suck. 0 out of 10, doesn't look good. Next one as well, 0 out of 10, doesn't look good. I know that this isn't a saloon, it's an estate, but once again, there aren't a lot of low RQ estates in the game. The only other one is the Cadillac Wagon, and that is just a better car. That Cadillac Wagon is a 0.8 difference, 0 to 60, 4.1 seconds. So yeah, I mean, it is like way higher in RQ though. It's RQ 70, but I digress. Like I mean, I guess you can say that the HSV Club Sport is kind of in a niche of its own. You know, it's a medium ground clearance estate, low RQ, epic. There's no other car like it, but ain't much to say about it. It's just crap. The 0 to 60 is just so damn bad. RQ 66, man, it is a 0.4 second difference to an RQ 65 Q50, as well as the Cadillac CTS, and the CTS is decent MRA. It just looks bad, and then this one just looks bad too. The HSV Club, it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. It's 1 RQ less than the AMG. The AMG has 1 handling less, okay, 85 to 84, but the 0 to 60 difference is 0.4 seconds. I mean, the Holden HSV Club Sport needs to have really good MRA for it to be somewhat competitive, because like it just doesn't look very good, even if you compare it to the Cadillac CTS. Yes, it handles a lot better. Like, I will commend the Club Sport for having good handling. 85 is good, but then the 0 to 60, 4.8, 4.5. 2 RQ difference, doesn't look good. And last but not least, the last card that we're going to review is the Holden HSV W427, which 427, I don't know if the W427 is supposed to be an homage to a GM engine, because, you know, 427 is what they use in the Chevrolets, in the classic Chevrolets, but yeah, the W part kind of throws me off, so I don't know if that's an engine that I've never heard of, but 427 definitely is an engine number. But yeah, I mean, comparing it to other cars in the game again, the AMG C63 4484 to the Holden's 4584, I mean, that isn't a good start on paper. Maybe the HSV has better MRA, but that AMG C63 already has decent MRA. I think it has like 82 to 84 MRA. And then when you want to compare it to another RQ70, I mean, there's a 0.6 second difference. 260 when you compare the Holden to the Jaguar XJR. There's a 4 handling difference though. I mean, it's just I'll give it a 1. You know, that's more than a 0 that I give the other Epics. But overall, guys, that's going to be it for today. That's my evaluation of all the new cars that we've seen teased so far. Once again, shout out to all the influencers that got, you know, the unique cars to tease. So Android Fanatic, myself, and Yellowfin as well. And then the Top Drives official channel for the rest of the cars. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today. Let me know down below if you're still hyped for Straya cars or not. I think Super Airs is basically going to be the strong point for this update. The Epics just look absolutely hot garbage. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. I'm going to stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Sit back, relax in my Bonneville Pontiac, hold tight all night.